Hello everyone, my name's Nicole and this is Let's Make Art, and we letter every week together. But this is a video that we're adding to our beginner lettering series because I thought this would be something that would be good for everyone to know. So we have been practicing and doing our projects with this Aquash brush, and this is the medium tip. But I wanted to explain why I chose this to include this in our box rather than any other brush. So the two different brushes that we're using that you have are the round zero and the medium Aquash brush. So first I wanted to talk about is the Aquash brush comes in 3 different sizes. So if you look at these, there are 3 different sizes. So this is, let me put it over here. So this is the thin or the fine, this is the medium, and then this is the large. There's a fun part to it. And actually there is one more, but I haven't really used it that much. And this is more of a wider one. So it's kind of cool. So you could make wider brushes. So there's 4 different ones that we're using. The reason why I wanted to use the medium one was because I'll draw with all of them so you can just see the difference. Any of them will work great. So if you want to get the bigger pack or the combo pack and get all of them, you can totally do that. Well, I have a little bit too much water. But what I wanted to show is, I need to finish writing out this whole word, else it won't look like anything. I do that really light actually. So I'll show you a different one. But what I wanted to show is that that's with the fine. And then this one is with the medium. And so the really cool thing, and the reason why I went with the medium, and I think it's a great one to start out with, is that these brushes are really flexible. And so what that means is that when looking at this is that you can push down and it'll come back up. So it's the same thing. If you push down, it'll come back up. But the cool thing about it is if you notice how tapered it is. So it's a lot wider at the bottom and it's a lot thinner at the top, no matter which one of these you have. But the thing is that when you're looking at this is that I can still get a really thin up and a really thick down, no matter what, or it depends on how much pressure I'm applying. And when I'm using this one, I can still get a thin up. I just can't get as thick of a down. So that's why I loved this one, and I went with the happy medium one, because you can get the range. You can get a really thick, and you can still get a thin. The other thing in tandem with all of this is that if you're out there and you're trying to figure out which brushes do I actually want to get, is if you have in your toolbox, especially if you're here with us for the watercolor group, you probably have a round 2 and a round 6 that Sarah uses. The thing with those is that if you're looking at me in comparison, this is the round 6. So if we're looking at in comparison how the height of how long the bristles are. So this is probably, maybe this is even, that's a little bit wider. So comparing the medium Aquash brush to our round 6 is you can see is that these bristles are a lot longer. Even though they're about the same width, they're a little bit longer, and they also don't have as tapered of a tip. So this does not matter when you're painting. However, when I'm lettering, if I were to use this same one, it is harder for me to control and also to get as thin of a thin as I want. So if you have the round 6, you can still use it. Just know that because the bristles are so long, it might flip when you least expect it. So what I mean by that is when you're painting or when you're lettering is that it might do that and smush, which I talked about in the foundation stroke video, but also it might do this and it might just flip and do its own thing because they're so long. So the beauty of this Aquash brush is that, I don't know if they made this specifically more for lettering with in mind, but I found is that it's beautiful because it has that tapered tip, and so it's easier for me to control because it's a shorter distance or it's a shorter length. So I can still get the thin, and I can get the thick. Wow, yeah, that you can get really thick with this medium. Whereas I can still do that, like I said, with this, it's just harder for me to control the transitions. So you can still get a really thick with the 6 especially. It's just a little bit harder to do the transitions. So that's why I went with the Aquash brush for our box and what we're gonna be learning with. The other thing that I didn't mention is I like to use a round 0 in addition to how I was comparing the different sizes of the Aquash. If you're comparing, and this might be a question is, oh, can I use my round 2? It's a similar thing where if you're looking at this is the 0 versus the 2. Let me get some water so you can compare. They're both round, so they both still have that tapered tip. It's just that this one is ever so slightly longer, and it's a very slight difference. So if you have this one, you can try it and maybe you can master it and you can work with it. But for me, what I found is it's a similar thing that when I'm lettering, it actually, now that I'm doing it, it reminds me is it skips a lot more. So it does that when I'm transitioning. Whereas because this one is shorter, it's easier for me to control and it's a smoother movement. So that's why I really like this. And even though, as you'll see when we're going through the projects with this, even though this is super tiny, you can still get, let's see, I'm comparing it to the medium one here. You can still get a thin up and you can still get a thick down. I needed to have more ink on there, but you can compare, let me do it one more time. Thin on the up. Oops, I need to have more on here. This is as you're learning watercolor lettering. If it dries out like that, I went over a little bit in the last video, or the watercolor lettering one, is you just might need to load up a little bit more. So that's better. So you can see I can still get a very thick stroke even though I'm using this tiny brush compared to, this was the same one actually. So it's a good test to you if you're ever out there and you're trying to figure out what supplies to get, is look not only at the size of the brush, but the thickness of it. And so that will be able to help you. Also, really quickly, I just want to explain is that when you're using the Aquash brush, I go over this in a couple of the videos, but you can also insert in here and you can either add water. So in here, I added water. And what you do is you just squeeze a little bit and you can paint with it. I don't use that as much because it gets a little bit too watery as I paint and it kind of does its own thing. So I actually, as you'll see, you might notice, is I don't really add water to mine. The only time I use this loading part up to my advantage is I do this in the Love More, Worry Less project. And so you can add your watercolors directly in here. And this is a fun time, as you'll see in that video, where if you'd like to mix colors, let me make sure. So again, like I said, this is really the only time that I use this, but when I'm doing this, is it loads it up into the barrel of this and I'm starting to squeeze it out. And when you're starting a letter, let's see. Maybe I didn't add enough. Oh, there we go. So it will gradually use, I don't have to pick anything up, it just gradually seeps into this brush and then draws with it. So if you want to do an ombre, you can pick up a little bit and then it will naturally just continue on going forward. So that is a whole nother lesson that we'll go through, or if you haven't watched it yet, watch the Love More, Worry Less video. But in this one, I just wanted to explain the different sizes brush and to look for the length of your bristles is more important with lettering than anything. So that's it for this one. Join us. We have weekly projects every Friday that we release, and I can't wait to see you guys soon. Bye.